Hello, my name is Marlene, and I'm pleased to welcome you to the National Training and Development Curriculum. I'm so glad you could join me as you prepare for this important educational experience and for the journey of a lifetime. I'm on that journey too. In a few minutes, I'm going to show you a video about the importance of expanding your parenting paradigm. But first, I'd like to share a little of my personal story. My journey began around 12 years ago. Our daughter was 4 at the time. My husband and I both wanted more children, but we were experiencing unexplained infertility, and we were not able to build our family as we had hoped. We both grew up in large families, and I always dreamed of having a house full of kids. We talked it over, and we agreed that adoption was the right decision for us. We decided to pursue a private domestic adoption. So we completed the training, we did all the paperwork. A social worker came to our house for the home study. We felt we were very well prepared. To be honest, the hardest part of the whole process was waiting to be matched with a child. It took over a year, and that was hard. But looking back on it, it was worth the wait. Our second daughter joined the family when she was just a few days old. Hard to believe she's 10 now, several years after adopting our daughter. We decided to adopt from China. Our son was 2 years old when we first met him at the orphanage. There was quite a bit of paperwork and a lot more training. I remember thinking the training was not a waste of time. I mean, I've always believed in training, but not exactly relevant either. We were experienced parents by then. With our first adoption, we got her as a newborn, so we were parenting her pretty much the same way we parented our biological child, and things were going fine. So I guess we assumed it would be the same with our second adoption. We knew that with adoption, we would have children whose histories were different from ours. We understood there could be complicated social and medical histories, but we didn't see that as a deterrent to adopting a child. If anything, that was part of our motivation. We wanted to offer a child the same kind of childhood we had. Lots of love, lots of fun, lots of structure and stability. You know, mealtime, bedtime, homework, rules, and consequences if you break a rule, right? Plus family, vacation, sports, big holiday dinners. We believed that whatever was broken or wrong or difficult, we had the resources and the ability, and certainly the determination to handle it. We assumed that if we adopted a child, if we brought a child into a home like ours and provided love and structure and a good neighborhood, that would be enough to meet all of their needs, whatever they were. We soon found out those assumptions were wrong. When we first brought our son home from China, nothing much came up that we couldn't handle. I mean, there were the typical things, lots of waking up at night, some feeding issues. There were times when it was hard to soothe him. The kinds of things most parents of young children deal with, whether they adopted or not. My husband and I would reassure one another, we know what we're doing, until we didn't. All of a sudden, we were coming up against challenges that we did not anticipate and that we were not adequately prepared to handle. And they all seemed to come at once. Over the years, we had developed a great toolbox of parenting tools. They were pretty much the same tools my parents used when I was growing up, and my husband's parents too. Here's the problem. Our kind of parenting, what you might call traditional parenting, is based on trust and attachment. It doesn't take into account past losses, trauma, developmental delays, and differences. Our style of parenting wasn't bad. It just wasn't always the best approach. It wasn't working, and we didn't know what to do. If I'm being completely honest, I should have seen some of it coming. It wasn't until our son started preschool that we realized how developmentally delayed he was. We knew he was a little behind, but we always assumed he'd catch up. We knew he was shy, but we didn't realize how hard it would be for him to even play nicely with other children. Now we see that we could have been much more proactive in helping him with his delays. We started getting calls from the preschool, and they were saying maybe this wasn't the right place for him. It was all so overwhelming. Around the same time this was going on, our daughter's birth mother contacted us out of the blue. That was not a bad thing. We had always been very open to staying connected with her, but she'd been unresponsive for years, so we had kind of resigned ourselves to the fact that she didn't want ongoing contact, and we respected that. Now, with no warning, she was asking to come to our daughter's birthday party. Also, right around then, our daughter had started asking a lot of questions. She's always known she was adopted. We've always been really open and positive about adoption. But she was asking, why was her skin tone and the color of her eyes different from mine and her sister's? She was struggling with how she fit into our family, and even though I was the only mother she had ever known, she said she missed her birth mother. She seemed to get sadder every day. Well, this may sound silly, but at the time, I felt like my son's issues at preschool and my daughter's questions about her identity were a reflection on us as parents. It was like, we signed on for this. We should be able to handle things better. The truth is, we were dealing with some complex issues and some very new and unexpected challenges. We needed more information about what was going on and how to handle it. We needed some new tools. And you know what? I've concluded that anyone who is adopting children can benefit from having a few new tools in their parenting toolbox. That doesn't mean you throw away your existing tools. They still have a lot of value, but you will also need some new tools. Let me give you an example. Imagine you're a roofer by trade. You've been installing roofs for years. You're really good at it. So you show up at a new job site one day, ready to go. You open your trusty toolbox, take out your favorite shingle cutter, and it doesn't work. The other roofer on the crew seems to be cutting his shingles with ease. That's when it hits you. Your shingle cutter is for asphalt shingles. You need to cut slate shingles. He's using a completely different tool, one you've never tried before, one you didn't know you needed. He calls you over, you watch him work, and he gives you a few pointers and shows you where to get your own slate cutter. With a little practice, you're cutting shingles like the pro that you are. Later on, when it's time to install the roof, you take out your most reliable roofing hammer, and it's the same problem. It doesn't work. Once again, your coworker offers you a better tool for the job. It takes practice to get the hang of it, but you do get the hang of it. What's the expression? The right tool for the right job. That's how I'd like you to think of the National Training and Development Curriculum. The right tools for the right job. We're here to help you add some tools to your parenting toolbox so you will have the tools you need to do the most challenging, the most rewarding, and the most worthwhile job you will ever do, and to do it more successfully. Now, I invite you to sit back, relax, and watch a 30-minute video that will help you better understand what expanding your parenting paradigm means, why it is necessary, and how to go about doing it. The video is divided into 3 segments, so if you need to step away or take a break, we have built in these natural break spots for you. Let's watch.
A child's job is to explore the world, to play, to learn, to grow.
Oh, good job!
To embrace the richness of life and the joy of being human. A parent's job is to facilitate all of this by creating an environment that is safe and fun.
There's blue, pink, orange, and green, and purple, and red.
Good job!
Nurturing, attuned, and filled with love. Growing up in this environment, children see the world as a safe place. They're able to form healthy relationships with others. They have every opportunity to reach their full potential, to become who they were meant to be.
For something to show up.
And they caught it.
Yeah, well.
But for children who have known trauma, grief, and loss, the world doesn't feel safe. They may struggle in their relationships with others and with self-esteem. To parent these children requires a different kind of parenting, different from the ways most parents were parented, different from the ways they parented their birth children. These parents will need to look at behaviors, discipline, and love in a whole new light. It's a new perspective on parenting, one that calls upon parents who are fostering or adopting to expand their parenting paradigm, to build on the skills they bring to the table, but also to learn new skills to help children who have experienced trauma, grief, and loss.
One of the things that we've learned, and we've learned this in so many ways, again and again and again, both through research and clinical experience, is that relationships are the vehicle by which people heal and by which people develop optimally, and that the relational interaction with the parent is probably the primary therapeutic tool.
In this segment, we explore 8 ways to expand your parenting paradigm, strategies to help you see your parenting role and the child's behavior in a new light. Recognize the importance of everyday family interactions. Move away from the idea of fixing the child. Focus on the reasons behind the behavior and not the behavior itself. Be attuned to the child's needs and be prepared to alter your routine to meet those needs. Set realistic expectations for the child and yourself. Celebrate the small successes. Use play to connect and find a balance between connecting and correcting. For children who have experienced trauma, loss, and grief, the healing happens in daily interactions and in relationship with the parent who is fostering or adopting them. It can be a slow process. It happens after school. It happens at snack time, over homework, in daily routines, around the dinner table. It happens in the quiet times, the teaching times, the playful times, the family times. The thousands of everyday interactions that teach children, eventually, over time, that the world is a safe place.
Therapy is really great. It's something that's so beneficial to so many people, but what happens every single day, every single morning, every single night, this is their therapy. This is what's going to change them. The person they meet with once a week can be beneficial, can give you a great outlook and a different perspective, but they're not the ones doing the work. You as the parent, you're doing the work.
The number one factor to help our kids is the family. It all comes back to putting kids back into the family environment. That is the treatment. That is the intervention.
At first, it may be tempting to think that you can just fix the child, that once they're in a safe, nurturing, and stable home, they should be fine. And it can be frustrating when the first attempt, or even the 100th attempt, doesn't work.
With the children that have come through our home, there has been significant abuse and neglect. I thought that with enough love and acceptance, they would be fine, that they would come out of it, and that they would be fixed. The reality is, I'm not the one that can fix it all.
It's not about fixing this. You will not have the answers. And the beauty of this is that you don't have to have the answers. Just actually by being connected with your child, offering relationship, being in a space that says, I just love you unconditionally, that actually is the answer.
Now, who's ready to make cupcakes?
The challenge here is to create an environment that allows a child to redefine their worldview and learn to trust. That takes time.
They need time, lots of time. And it could be years before they fully trust us, but that's okay.
Having a safe place that they know that they're going to be cared for and loved and protected in, that's a huge thing for these kids. And it takes them years and years and years to understand that and to accept that, because that's not where they come from.
Focus on the reasons behind the behavior and not the behavior itself. Understand that behavior is a child's way of communicating. Your challenge is to interpret what the behavior is telling you.
I think in a nutshell, the best way to respond anytime you see an undesirable behavior is to look for the why behind the behavior. Try to find out what's going on rather than just trying to shut down the undesirable behavior.
If we just address the behavior, they'll get bigger and bigger and bigger. It exacerbates the behavior, which is so counterintuitive to parents. They're like, well, of course we have to tackle the behavior because the behavior is a problem and it's not acceptable, right? This can't continue. But if we really want to extinguish that negative behavior, we've got to look at what's happening with that little hurting child underneath and how can we meet that need so that they don't need to have that behavior anymore.
Be attuned to the child's needs and be prepared to alter your routine to meet those needs.
You good? You good?
When you are attuned in this way, you will be able to pick up on triggers and anticipate needs before behaviors escalate. This calls for flexibility on your part.
Trauma is very unpredictable, and so our kids become very unpredictable. You may get up in the morning and you expect that things are going to happen in ABC order. All of a sudden you realize, oops, that's not happening. And if you keep trying to go to ABC because that's what you plan and that's the structure and that's the agenda for the day, but your child is going off on X, Y, and Z, you got to jump over to X, Y, and Z. You know what? You might need to put breakfast on hold. You might have to be late for work. You might have to be able to stop everything that you're doing as a family system to attend to the needs of one child.
Oh, you've got to be able to go with the flow and be flexible. We make plans all the time in my family and they change on a dime.
Set realistic expectations that align with the child's capacity and developmental and emotional level.
I think letting go was the biggest thing that I had to learn how to do, is let go of my expectations and really focus on who these kids were and what they were capable of doing and who they wanted to be. And then just encourage the best in that.
My one goal was that she develop a relationship with me, whatever that looked like. So I parented for relationship only. I let go of a lot of the other stuff. Doesn't matter if she can clean her room, doesn't matter if she can make her bed, if she eats all the right foods or not, that can't matter. It's that, is her mental health stable? And can she somehow connect with me? Can I be that safe place for the rest of her life, no matter what happens?
My definition of what success looks like has changed completely. For me personally, success meant perfection until these kids came to my life. And now success means meeting their needs.
The first concept is there is no perfect parent, ever. And you have to give yourself grace. This is a learning curve. So understand that this will be the hardest job you have ever done in your life. And you're gonna have all the best intentions. Here's the typical scenario. You lie in bed, you're like, okay, today I am gonna be like the most amazing parent. I'm gonna be patient, I'm gonna be calm. I got this. You go through your list, you get up and literally 5 minutes later, you've blown your top. And you're like, what happened? It's okay, just stop. Center yourself, forgive yourself, understand yourself. Understand that this is very, very challenging. Regroup and then just go right back at it.
Having realistic expectations will allow you to appreciate small, incremental successes. Be sure to acknowledge and celebrate those.
Celebrating the small victories means it may take a while for these kids to hit big milestones. That doesn't mean that there shouldn't be waypoints along that path. And all of those should be celebrated, because it's not just for the kid to feel like they've accomplished something. It lifts your spirit when you can celebrate their small victories on the way to those big milestones.
Play and fun are an important part of childhood and crucial to a safe and stable environment where children can thrive.
Sometimes families just need to focus on being a family and having fun together.
You have to stay playful and you have to have fun with your children, even if they need a lot of structure and discipline. You have to have fun with them because you forget sometimes that they're just kids.
Correcting a child is more effective when you connect first. Find a balance that supports your relationship building goal.
I think it can pick up water, but I'm not sure if it'll pick up the bead.
Sometimes we forget that the definition of discipline is actually to teach.
That was a key flip in my brain. If I'm always constantly trying to correct misbehavior, and I'm looking at it as correcting misbehavior, then I'm always constantly the disciplinarian and the bad guy. And why would my children want to have those loving, caring relationships that are necessary for healing with a meanie? When I realized I say don't, no, stop, almost everything that came out of my mouth with my daughter, I'm like, I have to change this. Who wants to hear criticism all day long? Who wants to be told they're wrong? Nobody. I don't. I have to say, these are the good things. These are the things I like about you. These are the things you're good at.
Every child is different, Each child comes into care with experiences that will affect how you parent.
Knowing that there's not a one-size-fits-all approach to raising traumatized children, you've got to go with what works.
I think the most important thing for resource parents to know in terms of trauma is the impact that it has on a developing brain. As a parent, when you're met with all kinds of challenging behavior, it's hard to think beyond the behavior. And realizing that some of that behavior, particularly behavior that's very disrespectful, defiant, scary, aggressive, unsafe, realizing that that behavior flows from the impact of trauma is crucial because it suggests very different ways of trying to handle it.
Science tells us that the experiences we have in the first years of life have a profound impact on how our brain develops. We know that a growing brain needs a nurturing environment, positive interactions, sensory-rich experiences, strong attachments, and learning opportunities. We also know that toxic stress can interfere with healthy brain development. To understand how trauma impacts the developing brain, consider how a brain develops under optimal conditions. It starts here, in utero.
If you look at this simple model of the brain, part of what we're trying to illustrate with this image is that the brain's organized in a hierarchical fashion, from the lowest and simplest parts all the way up to the highest and most complex parts of the brain.
Beginning in utero, the brain develops from the bottom, or brainstem, to the top, or cortex.
And that part of the brain is involved in planning and speech and language and knowing right from wrong. And then when you go way down to the bottom part of the brain, this is the part of the brain that's involved in regulating heart rate, blood pressure, respiration, very simple functions. The middle parts of the brain mediate and are responsible for your mood, and they play a role in attention, and they play a role in motor movement. If you have healthy relational experiences, lots of learning opportunities, you are in an environment where you're loved and you get attention and you have opportunities to explore the world in a healthy way, those systems develop pretty normally and they help the brain and body work in this smooth and integrated way. But we know that there are three things that will predictably alter the development of those systems and cause problems in every part of the brain that they connect with and in the body. And those three things are some form of intrauterine insult, like prenatal alcohol, prenatal meth, prenatal distress for the mother. The second thing is disruptions in bonding and attachment in the first years of life. And the third thing is traumatic experiences. And so when you think about the child that you live with, many of those children have had all three of those things. They've had some form of intrauterine insult. They've had bonding disruptions when they were young. And then they've been exposed to all kinds of events that are potentially traumatic. And so it's no surprise then that they have a cascade of problems from the top part of their brain all the way down to the bottom part of their brain.
This sequence of brain development, from the bottom to the top, is the same sequence by which the brain processes experience.
The fact that the brain processes experience sequentially means that the first part of the brain that gets dibs on processing information is the lowest and dumbest part of your brain. So the lower part of your brain, very simple, very primitive, very regulatory, and the truth is when information comes into that part of the brain can't tell whether or not this is an experience that's happening now or this is an experience that happened 10 years ago. And this becomes a problem, particularly if your experiences 10 years ago were characterized by threat.
Think of this lowest, most primitive part of the brain as the survival brain. In the presence of danger, the survival brain takes over, shutting down the other parts of the brain. When survival is at stake, nothing else matters. When the danger is gone, things go back to normal. But as we will see, the brain of a child who has known trauma may get stuck in survival mode. This is a brain on high alert, as though danger is always lurking.
It's interpreting the present based upon a whole set of memories and associations that were created in that child's past. And if the past was characterized by unpredictability, by threat, by chaos, what's going to happen is, if the present has any sensory cue or any quality that's reminiscent of that past, the child is going to act in the present as if they're being hurt in the past. And that means that if they had a caregiver who, when they raised their voice, would then hit the child, if they have a teacher who gets frustrated and raises her voice, the lower part of the brain is going to trigger a set of behaviors that are defensive and reactive, but completely inappropriate for that specific situation.
Any sensory cue can be a trigger.
When they hear a siren, when they smell smoke, when they smell the smell of alcohol on somebody's breath, when they see a certain tattoo on a certain part of a body, all of those things can be triggers.
The key thing about this is that most of us are at baseline pretty well regulated. And when we have a moderate challenge, we have a moderate internal response. But the kids that we work with frequently have what we call a sensitized stress response. And what that means is they're overly reactive. So if they have a minor challenge, they'll have an overreaction, and they won't think about the consequences of their behavior, they'll just behave. And the behavior will be primitive and aggressive. And so they'll hit the kid who bumped into them in the hallway. And then the teacher will go, "What were you thinking?" And the reality is, he wasn't thinking, he was reacting.
A sensitized stress response can be traced to the baby's earliest experiences, the associations and memories that were formed in infancy.
You connect as an infant, touch and smell and sight and sound, and it helps you make sense out of the world. And the major provider of the environmental cues for the baby is the primary caregiver. So if this primary caregiver, this attuned, attentive, and responsive caregiver, is meeting your fundamental needs when you're hungry, when you're thirsty, when you're cold, and so forth, your brain starts to make an association between human beings, all of the attributes of this person that's meeting your fundamental needs, and safety, and predictability, and reward, pleasure. All of this leads to a set of associations, i.e. memories, that become the basis for what we call attachment.
Visualize a cycle of attachment. In infancy, it goes something like this. The baby is hungry, wet, lonely, or otherwise distressed. There's been a disruption in sensation, and the baby is dysregulated. The baby expresses this discomfort by crying, whining, squirming, making faces. The caregiver interprets the source of the baby's distress and responds with food, a dry diaper, rocking, and other nurturing acts. The baby feels safe, protected, and understood. The baby relaxes. This cycle repeats again and again, thousands of times throughout infancy and childhood, creating memories and building attachment.
And so if you have these wonderful bonding interactions early in life, you have a healthy capacity over time to form and maintain relationships. And this becomes really a crucial part of your capacity to benefit from school and friends and everything else. And it's really very intimately related to success in life.
Now, consider what happens when the cycle of attachment is disrupted. As in the earlier example, a baby is distressed. Something's wrong. The baby cries out for help. But in this scenario, sometimes a caregiver comes, sometimes nobody comes. Sometimes adults are loving and gentle, sometimes they are harsh or even abusive. In this unpredictable environment, the baby feels unsafe, unprotected, misunderstood, and insecure.
Many of the kids that we work with, when they were younger, had inconsistent, unpredictable, depressed, or absent caregivers. And so their brain made associations between human beings and unpredictability. Human beings sometimes in pain. Human beings and rage.
It's no wonder that the brains of abused and neglected children are wired for fear. No surprise that these children see the world as dangerous and caregivers as untrustworthy. But there is hope. The hope lies in the fact that the brain can change.
One of the great gifts of our species is that we are adaptable. And in large part, that adaptability comes from the remarkable neuroplasticity that we have. And this is the hope, right? The very same neural networks that cause all of this pathology are the same neural networks that build resilience.
Resource parents have such an opportunity to change the experiences that these kids have had and to offer new experiences of safety and love and comfort and connection and the ability to be a productive part of the world.
It's not going to happen overnight. It doesn't happen through words, it happens through actions, and it happens through repetition of positive experiences in a family.
In Part 1, we learned what it means to expand your parenting paradigm, why it's important, and what it entails. In Part 2, we learned why we need to adopt this new paradigm when parenting children who have experienced trauma, grief, and loss. In Part 3, we explore how to do this. We highlight some of the key ways to expand your parenting paradigm to help children heal and grow.
That's a Sharky!
Yeah, sure. Why not?
The need to belong, to feel connected, is part of being human. For children who have experienced trauma, grief, and loss, that sense of connection is really all that matters, at least in the beginning. Making that connection must be your first priority. It starts with trust.
Trust and attachment go hand in hand. In order to be able to connect with someone, to attach to them, to be in a relationship with them, there has to be a high level of trust.
Children need to have that really good, safe relationship that they always know they can fall back on.
The caregiver's role, therefore, is to create an environment where children feel safe, loved, and secure. Children from chaos and unpredictability need calm and consistency.
So a traumatized child needs to know what to expect all the time.
My kids have a lot of questions about what's coming. What's next? Okay, then what's after that? And then what's after that? They're not trying to annoy me. They just need to feel safe.
So kind of having a schedule and a routine as much as you can in the home for the child is really important, because then it establishes consistency. It helps the child to feel calm because they understand what's coming next.
Sometimes resource parents will get frustrated at the beginning and they'll say, I am consistent, I am predictable, they can trust me.
I think that it's unrealistic and completely unfair to expect kids who've had so many broken promises to just trust you because you're trustworthy. That I think we show that in lots of little tiny ways every day, and that it has to happen over time.
So we can create a healing environment for our kids by having the environment itself as well as their schedules be very predictable.
Being predictable, establishing routines, and creating rituals all help to build trust.
If you put a ritual around it, it also gives you the opportunity to build connection.
You want to say goodnight to Mommy?
Good night, Mommy.
A ritual is a heart-to-heart connection. So the bedtime story or the snuggling up and sharing a little bit about your day. And if there's a back and forth connection where the underlying message is, I love you and you're important to me, that's the ritual.
It's baffling when tried and true behavior management techniques, the techniques that worked for your other children or for you as a child, don't work.
When I first became a foster parent, I thought, this child, I'm going to raise this child exactly as I raised my children, okay? And I soon found out that that was not going to have a successful outcome.
Traditional discipline, incentives, consequences, withholding privileges, timeout, and physical discipline don't work without a foundation of trust and attachment.
When a kid isn't doing something you want them to do, or they're doing something you don't want them to do, most of us parents, we try to make kids do what we want them to do. We're trying to show the kid who's boss and let them know that if they behave well, life's going to be good for them. And if they don't, life isn't going to be so good. And the problem is that that all operates on power and control. And you can get away with that with some kids. With kids who have had a lot of loss, trauma, stress in their lives, you can't get away with it.
It doesn't matter. This child has lost everything. You can't make it worse for this child. This is why consequences and punishment don't work for our kids. They have lost everything.
Because this evokes in them, this triggers for them what it's been like in their life so far when things have happened to them outside of their control that are traumatizing and upsetting.
This is why relationship is the most powerful way to connect with our children. We have the science to show us, but we also have the logic to show us as well that there really is no other way. And so as we parent, always go back to that. Love just never fails. That is the answer. Relationship is the intervention.
Not yet, it's still a little too hot.
In the midst of trauma and in its aftermath, children feel powerless.
Right here. That's yours, Jeremiah.
For children who, especially children who come from backgrounds where there's been trauma or loss, often they feel they don't have a voice. They haven't had a voice. Their voice has been lost or taken away. So when you can give them opportunities to have that voice, again, that's part of healing, but that also means that they're less likely to need to express their voice through behaviors that are challenging.
It doesn't mean that they make the final decision.
Yeah, we don't ask them, should we do this?
There's some things that are, not up for discussion. You have to keep the child safe, obviously, and there's got to be rules in place that make that happen. But I think that there's plenty of opportunities to have them have a voice in the way things are going.
Do you want to fidget? What's this one?
Come from a place of understanding the behavior.
Kids that have experienced trauma are not trying to push your buttons. They're trying to communicate with you in a way that says, I need you, I need your help right now.
So, yes, you broke a drawer. Yes, you slammed the door so hard that the window broke. But I still know that at the core of who you are not those things. Those things are just behaviors that are saying, I have this need that's not being met, or I have this feeling I don't know how to properly express. And so what you do is you step back from the behavior. And this is hard because your door is broken and your window is broken and there is glass on the floor and you have to clean it up and you know that child is up there cussing you out. Okay, so it's really hard to step back, but you step back and you go, okay, this child is still lovable. This child still needs me. This child still is worthy of care.
Be attuned to the child. That means being fully present, listening actively, and giving the child your full attention.
And then how many pillows do you have now?
This is where, if you can be fully present with a child, if you can kind of put everything to the side and be with them, these little moments of joy are incredible fuel. They can help you get through all kinds of future challenges, and it sticks.
Listening does not always involve spoken words. Attuned parents also listen to body language, behaviors, and the child's mood. Part of active listening is reflecting, a way of paraphrasing what you've heard to validate, demonstrate understanding, and help the child recognize emotions.
Do you remember your first day at middle school? Your first couple of days? It's kind of scary, but towards the end you were comfortable, right?
We do a lot of wondering or kind of narrating, like, this is what I'm noticing, you were sitting kind of this way on the sofa, I'm wondering if you're feeling a little sad. That kind of wondering aloud opens up the conversation.
No one knows them. No one knows that when they make a beeping sound, it means they're scared. Who would know that? only someone that's loved him for 8 years.
Sometimes they know their feelings but don't know the emotions behind it, know how to give the words for the emotions, so we can help them with that. And that's part of giving emotional safety.
Some of the best opportunities for connection can happen during a parallel activity. Walking together, coloring, watching TV, driving, or just sitting side by side. A child's chronological age may not match their developmental age, especially during times of stress.
In trauma, we throw away the chronological age completely. You want to look at every child from where they are developmentally.
I think when I understood that my child really was functioning on a much lower developmental level, I was able to roll with some of the behaviors a little more and make accommodations for him. Instead of disciplining a child for acting immature, I was able to see, well, 4-year-old Michael or 2-year-old Michael needs this right now.
I think a lot of our parents are assuming that there's a skill set that comes with a child of a certain age in terms of their own emotional intelligence, understanding and identifying and expressing their emotions, and also in terms of life skills.
In reality, these children may lack many of the skills that other children acquire in families. These skills can be learned in the new environment. Self-regulation is key. One of the biggest challenges for parents who are fostering or adopting is to stay regulated and not take things personally.
There's one fundamental truth that we need to talk about today, and that is that somebody who's dysregulated, worked up, can't regulate somebody else. So I tell parents, the most important thing is us staying calm.
If the kid can't find peace, you have to be it. You have to bring that peace. If they can't find calm, you have to be it.
So for a kid who is dysregulated, you gotta get them regulated. And that's based on our relationship, and it's based on me being calm first.
Over time, it's easier to see undesirable behaviors for what they really are. An unmet need, a gap in skills, unresolved grief, stress, or fear.
So if I was to go in that room and start giving them a lecture on why they shouldn't be acting the way they're acting, that's just gonna escalate them more. But if I come in and we're not even talking about it, I'm just there, my physical calm presence is going to help them calm down. And then when you get to the time where it's time to process what just happened, at that point you can usually have a quiet, honest conversation about whatever occurred. And for us, that point is the point where it's really all about repair. What relationship repair? What got damaged? How do you fix that? How can we make that better going forward? And so they're vulnerable, they're open, and they're willing, and you really are making progress in those moments, and you begin to see less of those explosions over time.
The best advice I can tell a foster parent is never to take it personally. Just don't. I don't care what you hear coming out of their mouth. Don't take it personal.
You have to just say to yourself, it's not about me. It's not about me.
If you could just tell yourself it's about this child and it's not about me, you'll find the strength.
Ultimately, families that do succeed and are successful at this are the ones that come to a level of acceptance, complete acceptance. They throw out all their expectations from the beginning and accept, okay, this child is exactly who he is or she is, and they're perfectly acceptable just who they are. And we want to move them forward to help them heal, but we're not trying to get a child to be somebody that they aren't.
I find so many beautiful things about this adoption process that I've been part of. To have someone love you who shouldn't is beautiful. You get to witness someone blossom, someone feel safe, someone develop their personality.
There's nothing like the love of a child. You'll never be loved in your life ever like a child loves you, is capable of loving you. And a child who you didn't think had that in them, when they show that to you and you're the one who's on the receiving end of that, there's nothing more powerful.
It's not what I thought it would be, and it doesn't have to. It's better.
harder, better.
Welcome back. By now, I trust that you are starting to get a sense of what it means to expand your parenting paradigm and why it's important in your role as an adoptive parent. I truly hope you're looking forward to adding some new tools to your parenting toolbox as you take on the joys and challenges of raising children who have experienced separation, grief, loss, and sometimes even trauma. As you continue through the National Training and Development Curriculum, you will gain many skills and acquire much knowledge, and you will also grow in your capacity as a parent. I am confident that you will develop the skills you need to help your children thrive as you become more adaptive, patient, creative, hopeful, and confident. It's all part of building that parenting toolbox we keep talking about, and you do it by being willing to expand your parenting paradigm. One last example that will help you put all of this into context. If you had a child with a food allergy or asthma or diabetes, you would learn everything you could to meet your child's needs, right? And you would do anything you had to do to keep your child healthy and safe. Think about a child with diabetes specifically. You would learn to adjust the child's food intake, you'd make sure the child is eating the right foods throughout the day, give them any medications they need, and you'd learn to recognize signs pointing to low blood sugar. You would not expect a child with diabetes to adjust their medical needs to accommodate you, nor would you demand that they adjust their health needs to be more like those of your other children. Like all good parents, you would make the necessary adjustments. And you would make a point of educating anyone who takes care of your child to be sure they know what your child needs. The children we're talking about, children who have experienced loss and grief, and in some cases trauma, don't necessarily have a clear-cut diagnosis like diabetes. Their struggles may not be obvious at a glance, but like a child with diabetes, these children do have needs, and we're the ones who have to make the adjustments to meet their needs. Psychologist Dr. Karen Purvis said it best. We encourage you to have the mindset that it's you and the child facing the world, ready to resolve whatever problems arise. Show your deep commitment not only in words, but through body language, posture, and voice. I invite you to approach this journey with an open mind and receptive heart. Be ready to challenge and stretch yourself as never before. Be prepared to love unconditionally, even if there are times you're not receiving that love back. You will learn things about yourself that you never knew, and you're going to grow in ways you never imagined. But know that whatever you're imagining, you'll probably end up with something completely different. It can be hard, but it's so worth it.